Imagine this, it's 2 a.m., and you're hunched over the toilet, your body racked by violent vomiting. Fever chills make your bones ache, and every muscle feels like it's been pulled taut. Just 12 hours ago, you ate that seemingly harmless takeout sushi. Now your world has shrunk to the space between the bed and the bathroom. By day 3, the vomiting stops, the fever breaks, and you tentatively nibble on toast. You think, okay, I'm on the mend. You go back to work, start eating normally again. But then, a week later, the fatigue hits. Thick, unrelenting, like someone poured concrete into your veins. Your stomach cramps return without warning, sharp enough to double you over. And that nagging headache, it's become a constant companion, throbbing behind your eyes like a warning signal you can't ignore. This is where the story gets tricky, because here's the question that's been hiding in plain sight. When does food poisoning really end? Not the dramatic part, the vomiting, the fever, the urgent trips to the bathroom, but the quiet, insidious part that lingers long after you think you've recovered. The part that leaves you wondering why you're still exhausted when you should be back to normal. Why your digestion feels like a ticking time bomb. Why that once familiar sense of health feels just out of reach, like a door that's slightly ajar but won't fully open. You might think symptoms stop, so the illness is over. That's how it works with the flu, right? But food poisoning isn't the flu. It's a silent negotiator, a trickster that plays by different rules. For every person who bounces back in a few days, there's another who battles lingering fatigue for weeks, or develops a chronic digestive disorder that lasts years. Think about the elderly neighbor who never quite regained her appetite after that bad batch of potato salad, or the college student who missed a month of classes because food poisoning turned into something doctors couldn't quite name. The recovery timeline isn't a straight line. It's a maze, full of dead ends and hidden passages that only some people stumble into. And here's the paradox. The more you think you understand it, the more it slips away. You've probably heard the standard advice. Rest, stay hydrated, it'll pass in a couple of days. But for vulnerable groups, pregnant women, young children, seniors, that couple of days could be a dangerous oversimplification. What if the real enemy isn't just the bacteria or toxins in your food, but the misconception that recovery is as simple as waiting for symptoms to disappear? What if the moment you stop worrying is exactly when the real trouble starts? You see, the body is a complex ecosystem, and food poisoning is an invasion that disrupts more than just your stomach. It's a shock to your immune system, a stressor on your organs, a thief of nutrients you didn't even know you needed. And when medical care goes wrong, when a misdiagnosis leads to the wrong treatment, or when home remedies delay proper care, that invasion can leave scars, both visible and invisible. Scars that don't show up on a checklist of symptoms, but make themselves known in the quiet moments. The sudden dizziness when you stand up, the unexplained weight loss, the anxiety that hits every time you open a takeout container. So let's rephrase the question. How do you know when you're truly healed, not just symptom-free? How do you navigate a recovery process that can look so different from person to person, that can hide long-term risks behind a facade of temporary relief? The answer isn't as simple as counting the days until you can eat a solid meal again. It's about understanding the hidden battles your body is still fighting, the silent toll that even a mild case can take. Because here's the harsh truth. The moment you stop tracking your recovery is the moment you become vulnerable to its lingering effects. And in a world where millions fall victim to food poisoning every year, that's a risk too many of us are unwittingly taking. So let's dive deeper into the real timeline of recovery, the factors that can stretch it into weeks or even months, and the warning signs you can't afford to ignore. Because your body's healing journey is far more complex than you think, and understanding it could be the difference between a quick recovery and a battle that never really ends. Let's start with the gut, your body's first battlefield. When contaminated food hits your system, it's not just causing immediate chaos with vomiting and diarrhea. Those bacteria, viruses, or toxins are waging a war on your intestinal lining, the delicate layer of cells that acts as a barrier between what you eat and your bloodstream. Imagine tiny soldiers punching holes in a protective wall. Suddenly, undigested food particles, toxins, and even bacteria slip through, triggering a full-blown inflammatory response. Your immune system, which was supposed to be your ally, goes into overdrive, releasing cytokines that make you feel achy, fatigued, and foggy-headed. This inflammation doesn't just disappear when the vomiting stops. It lingers, slowly repairing that damaged lining, but leaving behind a landscape of instability. That's why you might notice months later that certain foods you used to tolerate now send your stomach into a tailspin. Your gut microbiome, the trillions of beneficial bacteria that help digest food and regulate immunity, has been decimated. Picture a thriving forest burned to ash. The bad bacteria temporarily take over, and even when they are gone, the ecosystem is unbalanced. For some people, this imbalance corrects itself in weeks. For others, especially those who took antibiotics unnecessarily, a common misstep in self-treatment, the microbiome might never fully recover, leading to chronic conditions like irritable bowel syndrome. Now, think about why this hits vulnerable groups harder. A child's digestive system is still developing. Their intestinal lining is thinner, their immune system's less experienced. When a toddler gets food poisoning, their body doesn't just fight the invader. It's also trying to build itself up, which means recovery becomes a delicate dance between healing and growth. Pregnant women face a double-edged sword. Their immune systems are slightly suppressed to protect the fetus, making them more susceptible to infections, while the physical stress of vomiting and dehydration can strain both mother and baby. And seniors, their organs have decades of wear and tear. A healthy 30-year-old liver can detoxify toxins efficiently, but a 70-year-old liver might struggle, allowing harmful substances to circulate longer and cause more damage. It's not just about age. It's about the cumulative toll on every system that food poisoning exploits. Then there's the silent enemy of misdiagnosis. You might go to the doctor complaining of stomach cramps and fatigue, and they might mistake it for a viral bug or stress. After all, food poisoning isn't always on the differential unless you mention a clear case of contaminated food. Without proper testing, like stool cultures or blood work, the real culprit, say Campylobacter or E. coli, goes untreated. Antibiotics for a viral infection. Useless, and they'll only wreck your microbiome further. Or worse, ignoring a bacterial infection that needs specific treatment, allowing it to linger and spread, causing complications like reactive arthritis or kidney damage. These aren't rare horror stories. They're the reality for anyone who falls through the cracks of a healthcare system that often dismisses just food poisoning as a minor inconvenience. And let's talk about time, how it warps in the shadow of mismanaged recovery. You might think, I felt better after a week, so why am I still tired a month later? That's because your body is engaged in a marathon, not a sprint. Every cell damaged by toxins needs to be repaired or replaced. Nutrients lost through vomiting and diarrhea, electrolytes, vitamins, minerals must be replenished. But if you're not eating properly, or if your gut can't absorb nutrients anymore, that deficit becomes a weight dragging you down. The adrenal glands, which pump out stress hormones during illness, might get stuck in overdrive, leaving you jittery and exhausted all at once. It's a domino effect. One system compromised leads to another, and suddenly feeling better is a moving target. Here's the root of the misunderstanding. We've been taught to view illness as a battle with a clear beginning and end, marked by the presence or absence of symptoms. But food poisoning is a siege that weakens your body's defenses in ways that aren't immediately visible. It's like a storm that floods your house. You can mop up the water and fix the obvious damage, but the mold grows in the walls, unseen, until it's too late. The recovery timeline doctors give you, the 48 hours for norovirus, the 7 days for salmonella, those are averages for otherwise healthy people with uncomplicated cases. They don't account for the person who's already dealing with diabetes, or the parent who's been up all night vomiting and can't rest properly, or the person who self-medicates with herbal remedies that actually interfere with the body's natural healing process. You see, the problem isn't just the poison in the food. It's the story we tell ourselves about what recovery looks like. We want it to be simple, linear, predictable. But your body doesn't care about simplicity. It cares about balance, about repairing damage at the cellular level, about adjusting to a new normal that might take weeks, months, or even years. And when we dismiss the complexity, when we go back to work too soon, start eating spicy food because the nausea is gone, or ignore that persistent ache, we're not just risking a longer recovery. We're setting the stage for problems that might follow you for the rest of your life. So let's ask the uncomfortable question. How much of your full recovery is just you adapting to a new level of discomfort? That nagging fatigue you've learned to power through. Could it be your body begging for more time? The occasional stomach cramp you brush off. Could it be a sign of lasting damage? The truth is, your body doesn't lie, but it does whisper. And in the aftermath of food poisoning, those whispers are crucial. Ignore them, and you might miss the signals that separate a temporary setback from a lifelong struggle. Because here's what no one tells you. The real danger isn't in the first few days of agony. It's in the weeks that follow, when the urgency fades but the damage lingers. It's in the assumption that feeling okay means you're okay. And as we'll explore next, those silent aftershocks can leave marks on your body and mind that even modern medicine is just beginning to understand. Now, let's talk about the aftermath, the part that plays out in the silence after the storm. You've probably heard of post-infectious syndrome, but what does it feel like? Imagine waking up 6 months after that bout of food poisoning, still avoiding certain foods because the mere thought of them makes your chest tighten, or feeling a sharp pain in your joints on rainy days, a new companion you didn't ask for. These aren't random ailments. They're the ghostly echoes of an infection that your body never fully shook off. Take reactive arthritis, for example. Certain bacteria like Salmonella or Shigella can trigger an immune response that mistakenly attacks your joints, causing swelling and stiffness that lasts months or even years. You might dismiss it as just a sprain at first, but the persistent ache is your body's way of saying the war isn't over. And then there's the gut-brain connection, a highway of nerves that's been hijacked by inflammation. Long after your stomach settles, you might find yourself breaking into a cold sweat at the sight of a sushi counter, or feeling nauseous every time you smell the takeout that sickened you. That's not just getting in your head. It's your brain rewiring itself in response to trauma, creating a psychological scar that turns everyday moments into landmines of anxiety. Here's the insidious truth. The body and mind don't heal in isolation. When your gut microbiome is disrupted, it sends ripples through your nervous system, affecting serotonin levels. Yes, most of your body's serotonin is made in your gut. Suddenly, that persistent low mood you chalked up to stress might be your microbiome crying out for help. And for pregnant individuals, the stakes are doubled. Untreated food poisoning has been linked to higher risks of preterm labor, yet the subtle signs of ongoing infection, mild cramping, persistent fatigue, are often dismissed as normal pregnancy discomforts. By the time the connection is made, the damage might already be done. But why do these consequences go unnoticed for so long? Part of it is a cognitive blind spot we all share. Our brains are hardwired to seek closure. Once the acute pain fades, we want to believe the story is over. We ignore the small clues. The way you still need to run to the bathroom after coffee, the way your energy crashes at 3 p.m. daily. It's easier to label these as post-illness fatigue or sensitive digestion than to admit that food poisoning might have rewritten the rules of your body. And let's not forget the cultural myths that feed this denial. The idea that natural remedies like ginger tea or probiotic pills can fix everything, or that pushing through discomfort makes you stronger. In reality, misusing herbal remedies can interfere with nutrient absorption, while ignoring medical advice when it's needed most, like when dehydration requires Roman IV fluids, can turn a manageable recovery into a crisis. Then there's the invisible timeline of cellular repair. Every cell in your intestinal lining has a lifespan, and when they're damaged by toxins, the replacement process takes time. Time most of us don't account for. Imagine rebuilding a house brick by brick while still living in it. Your body is trying to function normally, even as it's patching up damage at the microscopic level. For seniors whose cells regenerate more slowly, this process can stretch into months, leaving them vulnerable to secondary infections or nutritional deficiencies that further delay healing. And for children whose bodies are in constant growth mode, Unresolved gut inflammation can stunt development, affecting everything from appetite to immune resilience. So how do you distinguish between normal recovery and a red flag? It starts with redefining what feeling better means. It's not just about eating without nausea. It's about having consistent energy levels, stable bowel habits, and a lack of that nagging, something's off sensation. When you brush off persistent symptoms as just a side effect, you're falling into the same trap that so many do, confusing the absence of crisis with the presence of health. Here's where the science clashes with intuition. You might think that letting nature take its course is always the safest bet, but for certain pathogens like E. coli O157, H7, delaying antibiotic treatment can increase the risk of kidney failure. Conversely, taking antibiotics for a viral stomach bug, which most food poisoning cases are not, can destroy beneficial bacteria, creating the perfect storm for a yeast overgrowth or more severe infections like C. diff. The key is knowing when to trust your body's innate healing and when to seek evidence-based care, a distinction that's often muddled by misinformation. And let's address the psychological toll no one talks about. The first time you get sick after recovery, you might find yourself spiraling. Is this food poisoning again? Did I never really recover? That hypervigilance isn't paranoia. It's the brain's way of protecting you from future harm, but it can tip into anxiety disorders if left unaddressed. You're not just healing your body, you're healing your relationship with food, with your own sense of safety. So what's the solution? It starts with acknowledging that recovery has phases, each demanding different care. The golden window, we mentioned earlier, that's the period right after acute symptoms subside, when early intervention, like targeted nutrition, probiotic therapy, or medical follow-ups, can drastically reduce long-term risks. Waiting until problems become chronic is like waiting for a small leak to flood the house. The damage is harder to undo. But here's the catch. There's no one-size-fits-all timeline. Your recovery depends on factors you can control, how you nourish your body when you seek help, and factors you can't, your age, pre-existing conditions, the specific pathogen you encountered. The goal isn't to fear every meal, but to approach healing with curiosity instead of complacency. Ask yourself, what is my body really telling me when I feel off? What would happen if I took these signals seriously? Because the truth is, food poisoning doesn't just affect your present, it has the power to shape your future health. Those silent sequelae, the ones that hide in the gaps between feeling better and being well, are where the real battle is won or lost. In the next part of this series, we'll break down the actionable milestones of recovery, the red flags you must never ignore, and how to advocate for your health when even the experts underestimate the journey. For now, let this sink in. Your body's healing isn't a race to cross a finish line. It's a process of listening, adapting, and respecting the complexity of what it means to recover, truly recover, from an assault on your system. And that's a journey worth taking seriously, because the stakes are nothing less than your long-term health.